We need an economy to support our country. We need an economy to maintain social services and to provide social stability. And if you have the largest economy and the largest military power in the world declaring that it's going to use its economic force to weaken us, then yeah, there is a level of threat emanating in that sense from the United States. My name is Alan Jones. I was a career intelligence officer in Canadian Security Intelligence Service for 28 years and eventually retired as an assistant director, and in the interim was Director General of the Counterterrorism Program, the International Terrorism Program, the Senior Policy Advisor at the Privy Council Office, Security Intelligence Secretariat, and was Assistant Director of Operations, which is the Chief Operating Officer for CSIS, in charge of all operational activity.
What are the biggest threats facing Canada right now?
Well, threats are simultaneous. There's multiple threats. I was often asked, give us a priority as to what the biggest threat is in Canada. Well, there's a bunch of them, and they're happening all the time, and you got to deal with all of them. And they're not all the same. We live in a world where Russia is now an aggressor and has thrown aside the rule book on international law and behavior and is capable of doing just about anything, particularly when it's desperate, which I think it is now. Espionage. There was a belief for a while with the collapse of the Soviet Union that we wouldn't have to worry about spies like we did before. We're back at it again in force. In many ways, it never stopped. China is on the rise and uses aggressive intelligence and espionage tactics to gain an advantage in the world. We have terrorist threats which could happen any day at any time. There is no point where there is no terrorist threat signal in Canada. There is always a signal that there is a threat developing somewhere which has to be dealt with. Foreign interference, which I look at primarily as a threat to our democratic process. We have principles, we have a charter, we have expectations about how we live and govern ourselves in Canada, and foreign interference from states which wish to weaken us for a multitude of reasons, not just military, but economically, poses a threat to the diaspora of people who come from all over the world to live here, and to our democratic process through everything from physical intimidation and threats to relentless disinformation, misinformation, and manipulation, political manipulation.
Is the states becoming a threat?
That is an interesting question, and I think there are those who would say yes, but a qualified yes. And I'd quote President Trump himself when asked if he would use force to turn Canada into the 51st state. He shrugged and said, well, economic force. So we need an economy to support our country. We need an economy to maintain social services and to provide social stability. And if you have the largest economy and the largest military power in the world declaring that it's going to use its economic force to weaken us, then yeah, there is a level of threat emanating in that sense from the United States.
How does rhetoric like that from the American president affect the sharing of intelligence between Canadian and American intelligence organizations?
I don't know directly because I'm no longer involved in it daily, but one of the philosophies we always had at the service was, and this was generally shared by seniors at the political level, though not all of them, is intelligence services need to talk to everybody. And there is some common ground, which is such as terrorist threats. We dealt with the Russian intelligence services on terrorist threats. Everyone could agree that terrorism was bad and that we would do whatever we had to do to stop terrorist attacks against our societies. I have no doubt that CSIS and CSIS and others are working closely with their U.S. counterparts on terrorist threats. And we have committed the United States that if CSIS becomes aware of any information related to a potential threat against the United States, we would tell them. because we cannot be seen as a weak, vulnerable northern border. We have to be seen as a strong intelligence ally on threats and security. I am sure that the intelligence sharing would continue in dealing with the Russian threat and the Chinese threat. But I could imagine that there is some concern and worry about what that mighty intelligence machine south of the border would be capable of doing if it was aimed at Canada to achieve other goals, such as economic goals.
There's been a lot of concern in Canada and a public inquiry about foreign influence, foreign interference, and most of the focus has been on China.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a world in which the United States is engaged in covert foreign influence or foreign interference operations in Canada?
Not at that level. I don't think the average American has any interest in doing that, and I think it's always important to separate political rhetoric, particularly in the Trump administration, which likes to make loud, brash noises as part of a negotiating position, and you're always trying to determine how much of it is true and how much of it will actually happen and how much it is just showmanship in order to achieve an objective. I don't think the United States has any intention of trying to destabilize Canada or damage Canada's security. Inherently, it needs a strong Canada to be a strong U.S. The whole 51st state business, I think, was a bit of show. There might have been some serious thought behind it, and there's been some interesting discussions at the U.S. Senate Defense Committee about to what extent the U.S. military has been planning to deal with Canada, Denmark, and Panama over the Greenland issue, which Secretary Hegseth has danced around and refused to answer directly, not surprisingly. But I don't think there's any particular movement to destabilize Canada. But at the same time, the United States will protect the United States, including its economy, which is its number one issue at the moment, and they'll do what they have to do to find out what's going on here to their advantage.